Just how bad is the debt crisis here in the United States? Boston University professor Larry Kotlikoff says it is time to, quote-unquote, get real. The U.S. isn't just worse off than Greece. It's bankrupt. This is the thrust of his Bloomberg op-ed today. Professor Kotlikoff is with us from Boston this morning. Larry, a very good morning to you. Worse off than Greece,
Same to you.
Bankrupt even. I think we need a little explanation.
Well, there's a study that's come out with the IMF, or by the IMF, which shows that you need to come up with 14% of GDP to pay for all our bills at the federal level on an ongoing basis. So this year you need 14% more of GDP, either in tax hikes or spending cuts. Next year you need 14% of next year's GDP, and on through the end of time. That's a big problem, and that's coming from the International Monetary Fund.
All right. Larry, I have to be a bit of a skeptic here, and I'm letting the markets be my guide. The 2-year yield, 49 basis points. The 10-year yield, 272 basis points, 2.72%. Those don't look like the kinds of yields you'd see if anyone believed the U.S. couldn't pay its bills, if it was effectively bankrupt. How do you reconcile that?
Well, housing prices didn't look like the kind of housing prices we have today, if you go back to 2006. So the market is very good at getting things wrong. And what's going on here is you have a systematic failure of disclosure of what's really happening on the fiscal side. The Clinton administration is not really focusing on these long-term projections, although the CBO came out back in June, and if you really add things up, you get the same kind of picture, if not worse, from the CBO. The Bush administration censored this kind of analysis when they were in office. The Clinton administration censored it. The IMF has tucked this study into the back recesses of its U.S. review. So it's not, governments and international organizations don't want to put out bad news.
Is
they
that
don't want
to say,
put out the truth.
Okay, they don't want to put out bad news. Nobody does. But is that to say that they are effectively lying to us?
Yeah, they're effectively lying to us. There's no question about it. The deficit on which people are focused, and then the official debt, is really a small fraction of the over $200 trillion shortfall that the government is facing, the fiscal gap. And this is just coming straight out of the CBO's own projections. Just add up the difference between spending and revenues, present value that, and you have $200 trillion.
Good morning, everybody.
Larry, we've got about 90 seconds to go. I want you to do two things with that time left. I want you to tell us what the policy response needs to be here, and I want you to tell us what's going to happen if we don't do the right things. I mean, your apocalyptic vision, as it were.
Well, the policy response is to get immediate control on the spending, because that's been exploding. So you need to have a comprehensive health care reform that will give people vouchers subject to a budget constraint, and the vouchers would be individual specific. So that would do a huge amount to get our fiscal act in order. You need a comprehensive, low-rate consumption tax that's progressive. Get rid of the current tax structure. It's really, sclerotic. And then you need to have a fundamental Social Security reform that gets us into the 21st century. So there are things we can do, but we are in deep doo-doo.
All right. And Larry, what happens if we don't do them? Very quickly, with 10 seconds left, just how bad does it get?
I think you're going to see those bond prices head south dramatically, and I think the bond traders will ultimately wake up. Usually it takes a 2x4 across thetheir head to figure it out.
And what happens to the U.S. citizen? What happens to people who are subject to the whims of the market?
Well, we're gradually heading towards Brazil, or not to Brazil. Brazil's doing well. We're gradually heading towards Argentina. So over time, the taxes will go up. People will have, spending cuts that they didn't expect, and you'll have problems.
Larry, we have to run. That's Larry Kotlikoff of Boston University.